started here before I turn it over to Halcyon Levine and Associates, our consultant team. I do want to welcome everybody from the public who is here to participate in this process. We're excited that you're here. Thank you for being flexible and coming on to Zoom with us this evening to participate in this process. So I'm going to share the screen here. I'm going to start from the beginning. Okay. Okay, so we are excited this evening to present the complete draft of our new comprehensive plan. This is, as I noted, in draft form, and we are seeking public input at this point in the process. But this is a plan that Halcyon Levine and Associates and staff have worked very hard on over the last couple of years. Just as a note, the village over the years has had 3 comprehensive plans, the first of which was adopted in 1971, the second in 1986, and our current comprehensive plan that we're working with was adopted in 2001. And the typical lifespan for a comprehensive plan is approximately 10 to 15 years before some of the information in that document starts to become outdated and obsolete. So in July of 2018, the village did hire Halcyon Levine and Associates as our consultant team to come aboard and help us to update this draft comprehensive plan. So as you can see from this little graphic here, actually a lot of work has gone into this process. And to date, the village has created a work group that has been looking closely at different sections of the plan all along as it's kind of been put together over the last year and a half, almost 2 years now. They've kind of been advising the consultant team as well on what should and shouldn't be in the document. There was a website that was created, and that really acts as a hub for information and updates to the plan. I will talk a little bit about that later, so the public can continue to provide input by using that website and also just know what's going on with the plan as things change. So at this point in time, a lot of data has been collected. Halcyon Levine and Associates conducted stakeholder meetings with our business community, local service providers, members of the village's volunteer boards and commissions. And just to name a few of the groups that were involved in those stakeholder meetings, our Downtown Alliance, Chamber of Commerce, the Glen Ellen Public Library, our park district, volunteer fire company, our school districts, and as I mentioned, those commissions and boards were also invited to those stakeholder meetings. So we've got a plan commission, a zoning board of appeals, an environmental commission, the historic preservation commission. So lots of different groups of people were involved in those stakeholder meetings. In addition, we've also done some online surveys of our residents, our youth, and our business community. That resulted in 1,700 responses, from which we got a lot of great information and data. All of this information was used to create what was called the Issues and Opportunities Memorandum. And this was kind of our existing conditions analysis of the village. And it's also helped to inform some of the information in tonight's draft comprehensive plan as well. In addition, over this last about 1.5 years to 2 years, we've presented some information to the public in different ways. In October of 2018, that Issues and Opportunities Memorandum was presented to the Plan Commission at a public meeting. Of course, public input was taken at that time. In May 2019, the draft downtown sub area was presented, and you'll get to see a little bit more of that tonight. That was presented to the Plan Commission in May of 2019. And then in June, it was also presented to the village board. And then in June of 2019, we also held, that was our first open house, and that was really focused on our catalyst sites. There's 6 of those. You're going to see those this evening as well. Those catalyst sites are from our commercial corridors, some redevelopment opportunities that are really kind of important pieces of this plan. Village staff at this point and our work group have both reviewed the whole draft plan document. See. And tonight we're seeking public input on the whole draft document as well. After tonight's meeting, there will be another open house tomorrow. We have shared information about these open house meetings in lots of different ways and lots of different formats, trying to get as many people interested to participate as possible. Here's a pretty good list of what we've done so far just on outreach for this meeting alone and for tomorrow's virtual open house as well. So after tomorrow's virtual open house, there are 3 public hearings that we will be holding before the Plan Commission on the whole draft plan document. And then we do have up to 3 meetings that could be scheduled with the village board after that as well. So still lots of opportunity for people to participate. Let's see. I'm going to turn it over here to Brandon and John in just a moment, but I wanted to just provide a little bit of an introduction to their group, the House Seal of Bean and Associates. They're an award-winning firm. They have produced hundreds of plans and are experts in the planning field that are going to provide a great deal of information tonight. Some highlights of the plan they're going to go over, and then there will be plenty of opportunity for some little Q&A, question and answer session afterward. Please do hold questions till the very end. We'll facilitate that conversation with the consultant team and staff at the very end. And I'm going to turn it over to you guys now.
All right, thanks, Kelly.
Absolutely.
So again, thanks everybody for joining us this evening. I'm John Houseseel. Brandon Nolan is the other guy you see up there on the top of your screen. We've been working for quite a while now with the residents, stakeholders, and village staff to prepare this working draft. Again, nothing's been approved yet. Nothing's been finalized yet. This is an opportunity, once again, to get input from the public, although under less than ideal circumstances, and that's beyond our control. We had an open house back a few months ago, I think it was in June, to go over a lot of the concepts for the different sub areas that we're proposing around town. Brandon will be going through that as well. But what we're primarily going to be doing this evening is providing an overview of the working draft of the comprehensive plan. When we were planning and designing this to be held in person, we had prepared, I think, 16 different boards. If you can visualize 2-foot by 3-foot boards on easels, you could walk around the room eating a cookie and drinking a bottle of water and looking at the boards and asking us questions. But instead, Brandon is going to walk us through those 16 boards, which are going to be material you haven't seen yet before regarding different components of the comprehensive plan as it applies to village-wide issues and components. He will then, at the end of the village-wide components, provide an additional recap of the sub areas that we did back in June. In case you missed that, he will walk you through those board presentations as well pretty quickly, but to orient you as to the sub area component of the comprehensive plan. We've already made several revisions to those sub areas based on feedback we got from the community over the summer months, leading up to, at, and then following the open house that we held at the village hall. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon Nolan. Brandon has been with our firm for about a decade, I suppose. He's worked on comprehensive plans all over the country, and he has been the project manager working most directly with village staff and our project team. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Brandon, and he's going to walk us through, probably in about 30-40 minutes, the village-wide components, as well as a recap of the sub areas. So with that, I'm turning it over.
Yeah, I've lost most of my hair under your tenure, I think is what. So I'll share a screen here and go to the presentation. So just want to spend a little bit of time here just to recap what a comprehensive plan is. I think Kelly hit on most of this, but just keep in mind, we're talking about a 10 to 20 year roadmap. It's a policy guide that really kind of influences all manners of quality of life as it pertains to Glen Ellen. So we're looking at land use and development, transportation, parks and recreation, community facilities and infrastructure, kind of all the components that go into what makes up the place that is Glen Ellen. So it's a really important document. With that said, it's not regulatory in nature. It is a policy guide, but it's really meant to give a solid foundation to make changes to your regulations. So ideally following up on this plan, as we'll highlight at the end of this presentation, there are a ton of recommendations about how to tweak and modify existing development regulations and code to implement the vision that's kind of illustrated in this document. So And it is a living document. We don't have a crystal ball, but what we're trying to do is provide you with kind of the parameters or guidelines for change as it occurs. And ultimately, it will need to be updated every few years and make sure it's current and reflecting implementation and progress we've made, as well as changes kind of in the landscape as we see what the new era post-COVID brings our way. But and lastly, it provides a decision-making kind of framework and context. So this should be the document that departments, officials can use on a regular basis to really support their decision-making moving forward. As Kelly said, it's been almost a couple of years now, and we're at the tail end of this process, but there's been engagement throughout every step. And really this represents kind of the final check-in to make sure we got it right based on everything we've heard in the past. So it's about a 80-page document, and it's comprised of these 8 chapters. Introduction kind of goes over what we just talked about, kind of what's the setting, what's the context for planning. There's a series of vision statements and goals and objectives that pertain to each of the chapters. There's a land use and development chapter that kind of sets the framework that deals in particular with residential areas and commercial areas, which we'll talk about in a minute. Extensive section dedicated to sub-area plans that includes a downtown sub-area plan, as well as a sub-area plan for the Roosevelt Road corridor, the entire length, as well as the Stacey's Corners area. And within those, there are some catalyst sites or design concepts that were shown as part of that previous June open house as well. There's a transportation chapter, community facilities and infrastructure, parks and open space, and then the last chapter is implementation, which really summarizes everything that's been said in the document and provides kind of a checklist for action moving forward. Again, outreach has been part of the process the entire way, and we've really leveraged it. As Kelly started to recap, there's been a lot of input, and we've tried to use that throughout the process to kind of check us and keep us on the right track as we develop things. The planning area for Glen Ellen is defined first off by Illinois Planning Enabling Act, which says you can plan for about 1.5 miles outside of your current municipal boundary. With that said, we recognize you've got neighbors, so this planning area kind of shows the village boundaries, which are in the darker green, as well as that lighter green is your extraterritorial jurisdiction, as a fancy way of saying places that aren't incorporated that you can plan for somewhat in coordination with your neighbors. Other parts you've got kind of, because of the way things have been annexed, you've got sole kind of guidance for those areas. So we're looking at not just the village, but that whole stretch from North Avenue down to Butterfield and then some, as well as a little bit on the other side of 355. So with that, the future land use plan you see on the right here really does form kind of the backbone of the entire plan. So all the recommendations in the following chapters are really informed by this map. In the residential areas framework that we're going to go to in more detail in a second, pulls from this map. So does the commercial areas framework. And it really does lay out what is the desired future land use for every single block in the village for the next 10 to 20 years. What do we want to see happen to some of these areas? Obviously, you're a built-out community, so we can't change everything, but these framework plans that we'll go into really show kind of where some of those levers might exist that you can pull on. So these are land uses kind of in brief that are within that land use plan. Traditional residential, kind of your solid single-family neighborhoods, making up almost 2/3 of land use within the village. Single-family attached, those are your townhomes and row homes. Multifamily, your multi-story apartment or condominium projects. Neighborhood commercial, that really smaller scale, local serving, retail. Corridor commercial, really meant to be kind of the more intense commercial development that you have in the village, basically your Roosevelt Road corridor and some other pockets. Mixed use, really talking about your downtown, the kind of a vertical mixed use development where we've got ground floor retail with some upper story office or residential. Then you've got office. A lot of the office in Glen Ellen is in the medical kind of field and sector. So the offices are medical offices, doctors' offices. Not a lot of standalone office product except for a couple projects. Public and semi-public is your governmental, your institutional uses. As we'll get into the community facilities chapter, this is village as well as other partners. Parks and open space, so your neighborhood parks and forest reserve areas. The light industrial, you don't have a ton of industrial, but there is some. and then utility and transportation, really your utility corridors, and then kind of parking and other kind of areas dedicated to parking that it's kind of its own use, really isolated pretty much for the downtown. So the residential areas framework, kind of what's the goal? What are we trying to achieve for residential? Again, recognizing that there aren't a lot of undeveloped locations for housing in Glen Ellen. There is an emphasis on making sure that whatever happens in these infill sites that you do have has to be very sensitive to what's around it. So looking at the quality of the architecture, making sure there's good transitions between new uses that may be more intense in some cases and what's around them, really making sure you have that context sensitive infill development. And then attainable housing was really a big push from what we heard from the community. So looking at ways of providing a broader mix of housing beyond what you currently have. Again, a lot of single family development and less so when it comes to multifamily and single family attached. So senior housing, usually more appropriate in a non-single family, so multifamily or single family attached environment, something that's easier for people to transition to as they want to age in place. If you've lived in Glen Ellen for a couple of decades, chances are you want to stay there. It's a great community, and providing some other options for housing to allow that to happen is really a demand we heard. Also providing opportunities for young professionals and kind of new families to get a unit or a home in Glen Ellen is another role that kind of non-single family homes can play in your housing stock. And then, like I said, attainable housing, making sure that you've got a variety of price points that allow for folks to live and work in Glen Ellen down the line. Downtown's going to play a key role in providing some of this housing. So is the Roosevelt Road corridor. You've also got some great historic neighborhoods we want to make sure are preserved, and that context sensitive infill really becomes very important for those areas. And then also making sure we're being very targeted in code enforcement to have kind of a stick to go along with some of the things we're talking about in terms of encouraging quality development down the line. So this map for the residential areas framework really highlights, like I said, all those kind of small opportunities you have. You've got your built out community. Most of what's on this map is already existing, and we want to just see it be maintained and improved upon. Those areas that are kind of hatched and numbered represent opportunities where you can consolidate and maybe change the current use. So some areas where we've got commercial development along Roosevelt, where maybe we want to think about multifamily development as another opportunity because of the proximity to transit that Roosevelt offers, and as well as services. Looking at some small infill opportunities, this map, you can see some small parcels in purple. We're not talking about change there. We're just talking about those kind of context sensitive infill opportunities where you want to see the neighborhood really filled out. And then on the north side in particular, as you get to the St. Charles Road corridor and Geneva Road corridor areas, areas that are currently unincorporated that we want to see potentially, if they were to be annexed and served, some more intense development that would take advantage of the amenities that are available along North Avenue as well as other parts of the village. So the other side of the land use framework is the commercial areas framework. So really we've got three types of kind of key commercial areas. You've got your neighborhood centers, which we want to see strengthened. Stacy's Corners is a great example of a kind of neighborhood center that we want to see expanded upon where possible, and really leverage this kind of a northern anchor in the community. Your commercial corridors, we'll get to Roosevelt Road in a little bit here, and there's quite a bit of content just dedicated to that area. Downtown Glen Ellen, again, we'll talk about as part of the sub areas. Looking at kind of opportunities for office development, there are some pockets, especially kind of along the Roosevelt Road corridor, where we could see some office uses expanded into more districts, recognizable districts. The Hill Avenue area, this is an area kind of off on the edge of the village where you've got some light industrial that really could be repositioned and redeveloped potentially to be kind of a better version of itself and still be an employment area, but deal with some of the issues that we're seeing currently in the area with kind of unimproved parking areas and being sensitive to it being adjacent to the floodplain, and then annexation areas as we spoke to. So again, similar to residential, we've got some key infill areas highlighted here. Roosevelt Road we'll speak to, downtown we'll speak to. Some of those office areas I mentioned, you can see kind of blue areas dotting the Roosevelt Road corridor. We've got recommendations in the plan to kind of strengthen those as identifiable kind of business parks. Look at ways of marketing those and encouraging reinvestment in some of those office areas. Same thing with kind of edge growth in the downtown area. And then there's some annexation potential where we can talk about maintaining or enhancing office and industrial development in some of those areas. Another core component is the Parks and Recreation section. So you've actually got two park districts in Glen Ellen. Everyone knows Glen Ellen Park District, but there's also components of Butterfield Park District within the village. And so the plan highlights all these various assets. You really do have a tremendous inventory of park space, and they provide great coverage and really make the neighborhoods attractive. And to complement that, you've got the great facilities in the Village Links and Reserve 22. The Forest Reserve is another great asset that kind of frames the edge of the village. And there's a proposed trail for the DuPage River kind of branch corridor that we were showing here in a dashed line in the map on the right. And that trail will really be a great connector and a great kind of active transportation corridor for the village in the future. Looking at your park distribution, I mentioned, you got great coverage. All the blue dots represent existing parks, and the blue lines represent your walk shed basically to those parks. So kind of looking at where the playgrounds are in those parks and figuring out if you can walk to them. Again, really solid coverage where there's some opportunities for some maybe infill parks of those areas in orange or that kind of brownish color. And so we've shown some potential facility locations that would help address some of those gaps in your neighborhood parks service areas. And this is a perfect example, again, of coordination where we recognize the village doesn't control parks and recreation for the most part within village boundaries. It's up to coordinating with the park districts. So this document kind of cues up a conversation to say, hey, there's service gaps that exist, let this plan be an asset for you as a park district, and let's coordinate on how we can maybe implement some of these recommendations to help better serve our residents. And then last but not least, the floodplains and wetlands that kind of run along the DuPage River corridor, as well as kind of dot the central areas of the village. Obviously, flooding is a real concern in Glen Ellen. There's been a lot of work done by the village to address these problems. So if you look at Roosevelt Road corridor, for example, you've got some great Panfish Park. You've got these great areas that have been developed as open space that are also serving as kind of sinks for the corridor. So the village has invested a lot in trying to keep things moving with regard to stormwater management. And the plan kind of supports that and talks about other best practices to kind of keep that going.
Brandon?
Yep.
This is Stacy. I don't know if your microphone is, I don't know, it's kind of pops in and out a little bit. Can you just make sure it's connected well? Sometimes we're having difficulty hearing you, that's all.
Okay, let me see if I can switch to a different microphone and see if that helps. 1 second. I should have said something earlier.
I mean, we're able to generally hear, but it pops in and out just very fast.
I'll speak louder.
Okay, awesome. Thank you.
Thank you. Community facilities and infrastructure is another core component and chapter in the plan. The kind of the rhythm for this chapter really is about partnership. Again, the village can only control so much. So obviously things like emergency services and municipal infrastructure, the village can have a direct role in.
Hey, Brandon,
yeah.
Can you switch to a different mic? You're breaking up really bad.
Yeah, I cannot. My headset is apparently not being recognized, so it's the laptop. Let me.
I wonder if it would be helpful if you logged out, maybe log back in.
Yeah, let me look at my settings one more time. I've been using the same setup earlier today and didn't have any issues. So. Can you hear me? Like, is that still choppy?
It comes in and out. Right now it's okay, but
Okay. I tried to adjust the microphone setting. I'm sorry.
Let's give it a whirl and see if it's better.
So the key theme of the community facilities chapter is partnership. And someone tell me if you're not hearing me.
it's not good.
Okay. Yeah, this is, sorry, I don't know where this is coming from. I can log out, I guess, and rejoin, but I don't know if that's going to solve the issue.
It would come and go while you were speaking. So every time I was going to say something, I was like, oh, he's back. Oh, he's not.
So we've got some advice coming from the audience. They said it's happened to them before, and if you log out and log back in, it should fix it. It's worth a try.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay,
You're going to lose my screen share, sorry.
no worries. All right, sorry for the technical difficulties. We'll get back on here in just a second. Everybody grab a cup of water, run to the bathroom.
Kelly, do you want to take a moment to tell people where they can find information about the comp plan, where the full comp plan is, where we're going to post the PowerPoint presentation, et cetera?
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay, that's actually part of my presentation, but it was supposed to be at the end, so we'll just do that now. Okay. So for those of you who have not already logged on and seen, we do have a comprehensive plan web page that is that was created by Halster Levine and Associates. On the web page, there's a lot of great information about the plan, news and updates, how you can get involved, a storage of a lot of the documents that have been created for the plan. That website is here. On this page. And honestly, if you just Google Glen Ellen Comprehensive Plan, it comes up. You can just click on it. It'll take you right to the page. But the whole document, if you wanted to take a look at it after tonight's presentation and, you know, kind of hone in on some of those sections that Brandon is covering, you can view the whole document on this website. It's going to be under news and updates and also likely under documents, I believe, as well. There's an option for you to provide feedback on the website as well. You know, just click on the box and then you can provide feedback that way, or please feel free to just shoot me an email directly. I'm happy to take all feedback back to Brandon and his team. Additionally, I wanted to mention there's lots of different ways in which the village reaches out to the community to keep everybody informed of what's going on projects like this one. One great way is through Notify Me. This is our village website homepage. There's a little button here, Stay Connected. If you click on that and then go to Notify Me, there's a number of different ways you can get notified of different things here. We've got lots of different newsletters that come out through our social media channels and so forth. You could be notified of different things. But then this Notify Me page really lets you select what you want to hear about. And you can either get it through email or through text, but you can get updates whenever anything happens with a comprehensive plan. This is also a great tool for any other development projects that are going on in the village as well. Some of you may have heard we've got a proposed project on the McChesney and Miller site. It's Glenwood Station. It's one of the major developments that is happening in our downtown. So it's another great example of something you could sign up to be notified about. And that is all I have.
I would also add that if you go to the village's homepage, right on the homepage, if you scroll down just a little bit, there actually is a place that you can click on, and it will take you to more information about the comprehensive plan. And there you can find the link to Houseel, Levine and Associates page, and that's where you can offer your input. Also, as Kelly mentioned, any of the staff will accept written comments via email. So I see Brandon has joined back.
Great.
So I adjusted a couple settings. Hopefully that helps. I don't know what to do otherwise.
Okay.
It
Sounds
sounds
good
good.
so far.
All right. I'll share screen here again.
One other mention in case we run into a snag here, you could call in with your cell phone. That would work as well.
Okay, I'll do that as a last resort.
Sounds good.
Hopefully I'm coming through.
Yes, you are.
Okay. So community facilities chapter. The theme here is that the village can do a lot, but it can't do everything. So it's really about partnership. So we're talking about partnering with the Glen Ellen Fire Company, the volunteer firing company, to make sure we're coordinating on emergency services, coordinating with the school districts about changes to housing and what that means for student enrollment. Coordinating with the College of DuPage, trying to leverage them as an asset where we can, and really coordinate with them in terms of facilities planning and looking at future housing needs for their students and connecting them to the downtown. Transportation, again, as a built-out community, there's not a lot of surprises when it comes to your transportation network. It's really about trying to improve things where we can. Roadway capacity improvements in coordination with IDOT, looking at tweaks to your parking where we can, especially around the downtown, looking at traffic calming and some ways of promoting complete streets where we're incorporating bike and pedestrian improvements along with transit in some of your major routes. And so really one of our main areas of focus was looking at transportation. So building off of some previous planning work that the village staff had done, looking at where those opportunities to do some additional bike lanes or routes. A lot of your residential streets are pretty narrow. So this map tries to highlight some of the key opportunities where there might be room to be able to accommodate some of that bike infrastructure, looking at routes north and south in particular, as well as kind of complements to the Roosevelt Road corridor. So you can travel safely east and west and not necessarily have to use the main corridor. And then one of the last chapters other than the downtown and sub areas, which we'll get to next, is utilities and infrastructure. And again, really looking at kind of, your built out community, we're really focused on what are those opportunities to maybe provide additional service in some of the outlying areas down the line. So as we talk about annexation and growth, potentially there's going to be areas that need to have better service because a lot of those unincorporated areas are relying on well and septic or maybe have water but don't have sewer. There's different combinations. And so this map kind of highlights some of those shifts that can be made. And so then we get into the downtown, the sub areas. So again, the kind of slides we've just gone through, and hopefully you heard most of what I had to say, was covering the village-wide kind of core components of the plan. But a significant portion of the plan is dedicated to these sub-area frameworks. So the downtown Roosevelt Road corridor and Stacey's Corners. We'll go through these a little bit quicker, but again, these were presented back in June, and a lot of it is very close to what was presented before, but with some modifications to make it a bit more accurate or highlight some unique opportunities and reflect some of the input we got. The framework plan here really is building off of kind of the current work that's already going on with streetscaping and trying to improve the pedestrian realm within the downtown, highlighted key intersections and intersection improvements throughout the core, the key intersections being the ones really along Main as well as the Crescent. Some key kind of opportunities for gateway features and signage. This goes along with a sign plan that was adopted previously by the village. Looking at some opportunities to activate some alleyways and make them kind of better pedestrian areas and really kind of second streets for pedestrians, and trying to activate some of the commercial areas. You'll see on this map several catalyst sites ringed in orange, and then some opportunity sites that we'll be talking about shortly. But the catalyst sites being kind of Maine and Pennsylvania around the fire station, looking at Duane and Forest, kind of either side of Forest, just south of the train station, and then the property on the west side by the Lorraine and Duane intersection as well. So one of the key aspects of the downtown suburb plan is looking at kind of the way the current zoning is set up within the downtown. Right now, you've got C5A, your central business district retail core, and then C5B, which is your central business district service. And so C5A is really that kind of core, and there's currently limitations on building height within that area compared to C5B. And so it goes from 45 feet and 4 stories to 55 feet and then some in the C5B. So we're really taking a harder look in the plan at how we can reevaluate that, because a lot of downtowns, it's kind of the opposite, right? Where you've got a higher and more intense kind of core, and then it transitions out to the neighborhoods beyond that. So Glen Ellen currently is kind of flipped in that respect compared to a lot of surrounding communities. And in evaluating that, really looking at height, we're not just saying, height is good. We're saying, there's a reason some of your core Main Street areas where you want to promote some more intensity, and it's to provide what we call a sense of enclosure. So providing kind of a desirable kind of fit for the pedestrian improvements in pedestrian areas along some of your main routes. So, and also looking at kind of what kind of development you can really accommodate. As you can see this graphic or table at the top, when you restrict the heights, as you currently do, you're really limiting kind of modern development from happening, because a lot of projects these days, the ground floor is a high floor of about 12 to 15 feet. And if you're doing that on the ground floor, that means you're really limiting what can happen above it if you're capping things at 45 feet. Because of the shift that's happened within commercial construction, your code's really promoting some kind of outmoded development, and reevaluating your height is going to allow you to really accommodate some more modern development and desirable uses in the downtown that people want to see. And then another key concept we highlight in the downtown plan is the idea of potentially coordinating with College DuPage to work on a shuttle bus or some way of connecting students from the campus to the downtown. I mean, that's it's a commuter school with 27,000 students and staff, so that's a big sink of people that could potentially be utilizing the downtown. Or living in the downtown and then commuting to the College of DuPage campus. So there's a kind of a synergy opportunity there. We also looked at parking. I should note that Nicoll Way is our sub-consultant that looked at parking and infrastructure for the plan. And so we coordinated with them and did a kind of an assessment of where things stand within the downtown parking supply. There's been a lot of improvements as of late. The Civic Center parking garage, for example, was a big add in terms of increasing the number of spots in the downtown. A lot of the parking in the downtown, just by the nature of where everything's at, is south of the tracks. So in the future, looking at opportunities to maybe accommodate additional parking as development occurs north of the tracks is something we're encouraging. But overall, there's been kind of steady improvements made in parking supply in the downtown. Redevelopment opportunities, I highlighted some of those sites earlier. In addition to the catalyst sites we'll talk about here shortly, there's also several potential redevelopment sites that we flagged, and these are kind of discussed in more detail in the suburb plan, but there's kind of opportunities throughout the downtown to keep improving things, look at consolidating and redeveloping maybe aging development, or providing more housing or intensifying uses in some of the areas that are kind of more towards the center of downtown that currently are pretty underutilized. So this map kind of highlights some of those opportunities. So catalyst sites. This is a new one compared to the June open house. Previously, we had the McChesney site as a catalyst site, and it was decided that we really wanted to focus on another opportunity because of the momentum that's already happening around that site. It's time better spent in highlighting some more opportunities. So here we've got a site that's just on the west end of the village parking lot, Duane and Lorraine. And so in this site, we're showing an industrial kind of site with a lot of outdoor storage, one single family home that's in not so great shape, and then village owned lot next to it. So we're using about the kind of western third of that Duane and Lorraine lot. And so here we're showing, this could easily be senior family housing or senior housing. This could be multifamily, but it's the idea is it's pulling in from that residential framework we talked about earlier, recognizing that this is a site that's great proximity to the downtown. Doesn't really make sense for mixed use commercial because it's so far off of the main drag, but it's definitely an opportunity for more intense development. And so this concept is showing multi-story, multifamily or senior housing, proximity to the prairie path that's shown behind there. And then we're taking out some metro parking, but we're also commuter parking, but we're also replacing it within that garage that's shown there. So this would be kind of parking neutral from what's there right now, and then would also provide resident parking. The Pennsylvania Main site, this is the kind of the northwest corner of that main intersection. We know that the fire company, their station is kind of key to seeing this block redeveloped. Obviously, the village is going to need to coordinate and make this kind of to make something like this happen. So I should note that for all these catalysts that we're talking about, it's about kind of willing property owners, and we're really just trying to illustrate what's possible. Trying to show development that's we think is feasible and is supportive of the goals and vision that are established in this plan. It's not meant to say that this is what has to happen. It's meant to show this is what could happen based on these parameters, and really try to get the message out there that the village is open to have a conversation about these sites and others in and around the downtown and Roosevelt Road corridor. And then Duane and Forest, basically looking at redevelopment of the bank property and adjacent property on the east side of Forest, just north of Village Hall and the new parking deck, and then also immediately north of Village Hall is the property to the west of Forest. So here we're talking about mixed use with ground floor commercial restaurants, upper floor office on the west side, and upper story residential on the right side or east side. This is an example of a project that we did revise based on feedback from the public during that open house kind of session. So looking at really enhancing the park space adjacent to the prairie path and expanding that actually. So this site kind of gives some land up to that park to make that more of an amenity, and looking at programming that and using that as kind of a village square of sorts, identifying some kind of opportunities for outdoor dining and other activities along the base of this building, but really showcasing kind of how we can leverage Forest, which is going to become a very important north-south access point. Not that it isn't already, but it's going to become with the new circulation because of the station redevelopment, it becomes even more important, especially for pedestrians. So really trying to look at re-envisioning that intersection and the development that surrounds it. How am I doing in sound? Are we okay?
Not, oh, you come in and out.
Okay, I'm sorry.
It's not ideal, Brandon, but we're still getting the gist of what you're saying. So I think it's fine.
Okay. Sub-area framework for Roosevelt Road. A lot of the the themes in this are repeated in every single panel, so I'll spend more time on this one and less on the other two. But we're really looking at opportunities to consolidate and reposition sites throughout the corridor where you've got some aging small lot commercial development that could be kind of comprehensively redeveloped somehow. So we've got several sites highlighted here. They're hatched. There are some key sites where we think things like multifamily might have really great potential, but we'd also don't want to discourage commercial reinvestment either. So I think there's some instances where we're saying kind of either or be appropriate. Let's see what comes to the table. But the focus of this corridor plan really is about repositioning parcels. So you'll see some of these lines, access drive, alley reconfiguration. We're really trying to use the public rights of way where we can, or to facilitate and help with the redevelopment, pull traffic off of Roosevelt where possible, and provide improved access. This is the kind of the central portion of the corridor from Park to the Expressway. And then here, several catalyst sites called out that we'll get to in a second. The same kind of theme though, looking at reconfiguring things, providing improved pedestrian access and bike access where we can, and really improving the intersections. And then the same on the east side of the interchange, looking at some key circulation improvements, potentially some roadway realignments to help establish a more cohesive kind of node in the middle of that stretch before you get to the east end of the village boundary. So catalyst sites, there's 3 here. These were part of the previous open house, Park Boulevard and Roosevelt. We've got kind of repositioning some like the Fannie Mae site and properties to the north and west of it, looking at consolidation, providing enough parking, but also really improving the frontage along Roosevelt, providing an attractive corridor and pedestrian experience where we can. And also, as we reposition these properties, looking at potentially adding an extra turn lane for southbound Park, so we can avoid some of the bottlenecks that are happening there in the future. So that's an example where private development, if given the right incentives, can help also offset kind of a public issue as well. This is Exmoor and Roosevelt, repositioning some of the kind of aging hotel properties in that area, and showing how it could be more in line with kind of more recent new commercial development that's to the east. A hotel could also be a part of this site if it were to be redeveloped as well. There's nothing precluding that, but you know, looking at kind of higher quality redevelopment long term. And then this is Nicoll Way and Roosevelt. Right now, this is a kind of an office complex that's experiencing some vacancies. It's kind of a little bit dated and outmoded. Looking at, again, an opportunity where maybe we can encourage a different kind of housing product. So this is showing some multifamily complexes on the backside of some reposition and new commercial and office development along Roosevelt. The Stacey's Corners framework plan, really emphasizing the fact that this is this kind of unique neighborhood node. It's got its own history, looking at opportunities to expand some of that neighborhood commercial development in a context-sensitive way where we can. Improving some access management on the north side of St. Charles, looking at some single-family attached opportunities and single-family redevelopment opportunities along the Geneva and St. Charles Road corridor. And again, trying to really tie it together and make it, even more so of a destination for the neighborhood and serving residents on the north side. And then the last chapter in the plan kind of ties it all together as an action matrix that shows kind of every single item in this plan as a line item, the priority, who could be brought to the table to discuss it, and really, again, providing marching orders for everyone to implement the plan down the line. So that really kind of wraps things up on our end. Kelly, I think you wanted to hand it back to you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate the presentation. We do have a couple of people have joined us now in the audience. We've got up to 11 people. So we can kind of open things up for a little Q&A session if anybody has any questions or would like to make any comments on the plan. I can open it up for that right now. You can either raise your Zoom hand and we'll call on you, or if you'd prefer, you're welcome to type in the chat and we'll read the question aloud and kind of figure out who needs to answer the question. Or maybe the presentation was so clear we have no questions.
Exactly. That could be.
That could be too. Okay, we've got one question here.
Okay, Michael, I have allowed you to speak, so go ahead and ask your question or offer your comment. Mike, you're not, it doesn't look like you're muted.
We had
Maybe
some
Michael,
questions coming through for the plan
it's
commission.
Mike O'Connor.
Okay, Mike, maybe type your question.
We did have a comment in the comment box that perhaps we can label the BNSF on the diagrams, the railroad.
Okay. Should we wait a moment to see if Mr. O'Connor wants to type his question? Okay. I've got another question here. Stacy, if I missed this already, please ignore. Kindly read the question before asking aloud. Sorry, I'm literally reading it. Go ahead and read it first and then we'll decide.
So the question is there any inclusion of micro-mobility, bikes, scooters, Vespas, etc.? The last mile is important, and I feel like upon review of the plan, there is no mention. What would be your response to that, Brandon? And this question comes from Kristen Bond.
About kind of e-transportation, basically kind of the scooters and the like within the plan. I mean, I think it's accommodated within the active transportation discussion to some extent, and those kinds of micromobility solutions really do use a similar network. I mean, I'm trying to think if there's a specific reference to micromobility or not within the transportation piece. I believe that was something we added at some point, though. I can check.
There's definitely some good information about, you know, pedestrian and bicycle connectivity throughout the transportation piece for sure.
But I mean, it is a good point. That's a relatively new trend that we need to make reference to.
Yeah, I agree. The last mile is crucial because transit only gets you so far. Your car only gets you so far. At some point, you're walking or biking anywhere. So we'll go through, as Kelly said, the plan addresses bicycle and pedestrian mobility throughout, but we can go back through to make sure things like scooters, Vespas, things like that are also included in our discussion.
Okay, so the next question comes from Michael O'Connor. He did have some microphone issues. And so his question is, what is the timing for adopting the plan once it is complete? And I don't know, Kelly, if you want to tackle that or.
I can attempt to. So
Okay.
as I mentioned at the very beginning of the presentation, after tonight's open house, we're having one more virtual open house tomorrow night. Then we're expecting 3 public hearings before the Plan Commission, the first of which is going to take place in December. We're expecting the second public hearing, which will, you know, we're going to basically split the plan into 2 pieces. As you can see, this is a very large document, and we're going to go through it in greater detail with the Plan Commission. So half the document at one public hearing, half the document at another public hearing, and then the third public hearing will be to just kind of provide the full updated document, because those public hearings we do expect significant public participation in. So after those 3 meetings, I would guess we'll be through those by February. And we've got village board meetings scheduled, and we've got 3 of those. So I would, if I had to guess, adoption of the plan, maybe April or May. We're hoping probably April is where we'd be kind of focusing to get the plan adopted.
Thank you, Kelly.
Mhm.
So the next question is from Dawn Bussey, and for Brandon and John, she is the executive director of the Glen Ellyn Library. And her question is, District 89, which is our school district south of Roosevelt Road, it's the elementary and middle schools, not the high schools. So District 89 and the library had asked to include a shared space south of Roosevelt Road for early literacy purposes. Has this been included in the plan? And so I know I think Brandon, you had sent out, or your team had sent out surveys to all of our governmental partners, including the school districts and park districts and library. And I think that was something that might have shown up on both of their surveys. So I'm not sure if you had a chance to take a look at that.
Yeah, I mean, the surveys would have, that would have been as part for the existing conditions analysis. So, I mean, that recommendation does not ring any bells with me. So I'm not against incorporating that. It could have just been an oversight. But yeah, I don't recall that being explicitly mentioned in a recommendation. That's definitely something we can look at. I mean, that would be an example where we highlight it, I think, in the text and discuss it, kind of the need for it, but we wouldn't necessarily want to map it because you need to really look at kind of what opportunities there are to do a facility like that.
Don, if you want to speak to that further, feel free to raise your hand and I can allow you to speak. Or you can always follow up with us later. All right. So we have, Dawn typed a response and she said Emily Tamaru, which you would know this, but she is the superintendent of School District 89, has an idea for a location. So maybe we can follow up on that before we get to the Plan Commission and incorporate something in the draft plan. Thank you, Dawn, for that information.
Yeah, thank you.
So there is another question that comes from an anonymous attendee. Will there be bike rental racks by the train station? And I don't know if the plan addresses that, but I can tell you that if you look on the village website related to the new train station and pedestrian underpass, there are quite the accommodations for bike lockers. And so those will be incorporated in addition to having the standard bike racks there. Brandon, if you have something else that's mentioned in the plan, obviously jump in.
So I think the main, that really gets, and you said bike rental. And so we do have bike share discussed as kind of something the village needs to evaluate. But we don't want to kind of assume locations at this point. It really needs to be kind of, does that system make sense for the village before you talk about where you put the facilities?
Correct. They are actually shown on the site plan for the train station now and their location. So that's good. That's good information. So thank you. All right. So anonymous attendee had a question. Is there a time frame for all of these? Do we know what's coming in the short term?
So I would ask for a little more clarification on that question. Time frame.
Probably the catalyst sites
Yeah.
would be my guess, or the redevelopment sites. And I'm guessing that John and Brandon hear this question quite frequently and are very well equipped to respond.
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that the main thing is to step back and recognize that a comprehensive plan is a long range planning document for 10 plus years. And a lot of the recommendations or objectives of the plan include private property and the partnership of private property and development, which is dependent on market conditions. So it may be some of the illustrative concepts that we show for the sub areas may happen. It may be that they might not happen. It's meant to articulate an aspiration for what we would like to see happen there, or the character of what we'd like to see happen there. A lot of the other recommendations at the end of the document, there's an implementation and action matrix, which identifies several different things that this village ought to be working on over time. Some steps are pretty simple, like maybe amending the zoning ordinance. Doesn't cost a lot of money, doesn't take a lot of time, is not a capital improvement, can be done in a pretty straightforward fashion. An intersection or a roadway improvement or something like that is a capital improvement. It may require multiple jurisdictions, could cost a lot of money and take a lot of time. So to the extent we were able to, the implementation matrix at the end of the plan identifies several different types of actions that can be implemented over time, some more easily than others. But the development concepts in here are meant to illustrate the potential for development and the character of development, recognizing that a lot of these properties are privately held and will depend on market conditions. So implementation will happen over time, given available funds, market opportunities, cooperation of partners, and a lot of other variables.
Thank you, John. I appreciate your answer. The next question is, I'll read the comment. It is from, the question is, any comments in the draft plan on the existing grocery anchored Roosevelt Road centers? So as you know, we have a number of those on Roosevelt Road. We have the Jewel, we have the Trader Joe's, we have Pete's Market. And this question is coming from one of the owners of one of those centers, if that helps you answer the question. So I'm going to turn that over to Brian and John.
So again, a lot of these, the plan doesn't go so far as to dictate or to recommend specific individual uses on properties, because it's market dependent and private property ownership. So as Brandon said, when he was going through some of the Roosevelt Road things, he said, you know, this development concept could very well include a hotel or lodging or something. This concept might not show that because we can't show every variable or every iteration of what could be there. But a hotel could be very much a part of that. Grocery stores could be very much a part of that. We wanted to generalize and demonstrate the potential of those areas to be developed, what that could look like in terms of scale and intensity, and building orientation to parking layout to give you a sense of what the character of the corridor could be like over time. But specific and individual uses is going to depend on a lot of market conditions and opportunities of those sites, given potential tenants or developers or uses for those areas. So that level of specificity is hard to come at in a comprehensive plan. So,
yeah, and I would say, I guess, recognizing that the grocery stores are really important anchors for the corridor, I think the recommendations in the framework really highlight kind of how those sites can be better leveraged. So looking at outlet opportunities, looking at landscaping and streetscape improvements. You've got a lot of parking along the corridor that could be spruced up and improved with kind of small changes that could really go a long way in improving the overall aesthetic of the entire corridor. So I would say that's probably the key recommendation as it relates to those kinds of properties.
Thank you. We do still have a vacancy in what was a grocery store anchored center where the Fresh Market grocery store was. And so just as an update for people that are tuning in, they've been struggling to find a replacement anchor because of the size of the space. Obviously, it could be divided, but the configuration of it, such as it is, makes it more leaning towards one single tenant occupancy. Demising it might not be as easy as one thinks, but they still, the village is assisting locating tenants for shopping center owners. We have an economic development coordinator who works on that, but in addition to her reaching out and the shopping center owner reaching out, they've been unable to identify a replacement tenant thus far.
In grocery stores, it's a pretty rapidly and very dynamic sector of development and retail. I mean, you've got a Trader Joe's, which are highly coveted, 8,000 square feet. You've got Whole Foods now that they're owned by Amazon. They're looking for minimum footprints of 50,000 square feet. Historically, they've not been that. That's the minimum they want now, 50 to 60. Jewels, there's several Jewels in the region that are 75 or 80,000 square feet. Then you've got Fresh Time, Mariano's, Pete's Fresh Market. There are so many players now in the mix, and they all use different location criteria: education level, income, rooftops, visibility. So it's a very dynamic, but Brandon is right. They are crucial elements to a robust retail environment. It can really be a strong anchor regardless of size. So there's a physicality that has to be considered. Like Stacy said, some of these tenant spaces are too large and wouldn't fit, would be too big for, like, say, um, a Pete's or for a Trader Joe's, but would work well for like a Whole Foods or Mariano. So there's just a lot of variables at play, but a very important tenant for sure.
All right, so one more question. Actually, I've promoted Mike O'Connor again. He said he thinks he fixed his microphone and would like to ask his question live. So Mike, if you can try speaking, that'd be great.
Okay, can you hear me this time?
Yes,
All
absolutely.
right, excellent. So my question is with regard to the catalyst site at Duane and Forest. Would the comp plan recommendation require a zoning change for that parcel? Because right now, there's a single-story building there with surface parking. And I'm just wondering if a zoning change then follows once the comp plan is enacted or approved or adopted.
Gotcha. I'm going to let Kelly answer that question.
Yep. So that catalyst site is located in our C5B zoning district. In the C5B zoning district, we do allow as a special use residential. That particular catalyst site for the US Bank site in particular shows commercial first floor, and then above would be residential units with a little bit of structured parking on the one side, on the east side. On the west side, it's showing commercial on the bottom level, and then the floors above, I believe, are office. So on the west side of the development, the commercial first floor and office above is permitted in that district. And then across the street on the east side, on the US Bank site, would just require a special use. Any development on that site would be a planned unit development anyway, so you'd be going for a special use for approval regardless. So to answer your question, no, rezoning is not required to do that.
All right.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you, Mike, for your question. The next question that came in is, does the plan address neighborhoods blocks that currently do not have sidewalks? And that's again from the anonymous attendee. I can speak to the village's perspective on that, and maybe Brandon can just chime in to say if whether or not that is something that's included in the plan or reference to. But the village does have a policy, a resolution that was adopted a number of years ago that kind of outlines the village's position on sidewalks. And the village is very pro sidewalk. So every time we entertain a capital improvements project for a road repair or a road resurfacing, we generally take the opportunity to evaluate where we can not only repair sidewalks if they exist, but install sidewalks if they do not exist. In those instances, generally, there's a lot of public input, usually the residents along those streets, because generally when you go outside of the pavement of the roadway, you're going to impact trees, and some significantly sized trees. So the question is the neighborhood interested in sidewalks? And if so, are they comfortable with the loss of certain very large trees that will be negatively impacted? We have in some instances gone around trees, but even when we try to save them, generally the disturbance in the soil weakens the tree, and it deteriorates over time. So the village is interested in doing that. We have a sidewalk requirement for anybody who builds a new home. They have to install a sidewalk in association with that. And so you may see some parts of town where there's a new house and there's a sidewalk segment right in front of it, but it doesn't lead to sidewalks on either side. But the overall goal is to have a very walkable community, and so the village is focused on that. And Brandon and John, I don't know if there's anything in the plan that references that.
I think the plan really references the policy you just laid out for the most part, because you do have a great sidewalk network for the most part, and you've got these policies in place to kind of incrementally address some of the gaps. So I think that's as far as we take it in the plan.
Yeah,
Okay.
where sidewalks don't exist, they often don't exist for a reason. Right of way, trees, etc. So it's a tough thing sometimes to retroactively go back and install. So the policy is the important thing, and then opportunity being realized when it presents itself going forward is the best you can sort of do. So
Correct. When we've had some larger subdivisions, they always install sidewalks. We see that quite a bit. And the village, when we annex property, it usually has that rural road cross section. So the ditch and not necessarily any parkways or gutters or sidewalks. And so when we go in and redo those roads for the first time, that's when we engage in those conversations. We did on Crescent Boulevard, on the way east end of town, did actually install a sidewalk where none has been, and it's still a rural cross section. But there was some desire from residents down that way, and we went ahead and moved forward with that after some discussion with the village board. All right. We do have Mr. John Mulheron. He has his hand raised. So, oops. Sorry, John, I muted you. If you could unmute yourself again. There you go. You can go ahead and ask your question.
Good evening. I would like either John or Brennan to address just a question of the redevelopment, possible redevelopment of the Glen Hill Office Park area in light of COVID now, which seems to have put office space at it's hardly a premium at all. But these office buildings were built back in the 70s and are quite obsolete. And I just wonder what development opportunities exist down there.
So may I clarify? And by the way, John Mulheron is one of our plan commissioners. And John, I just want to clarify, are you talking about the office buildings behind the Panera and the CVS, or the office buildings on the other side of the street, or east of 355?
Well, I know that the ones behind Panera have already been a topic of discussion. I can't exactly recall what those options were, but I was just wondering generally, and then, kind of what incentives we could give to the redevelopment. I don't know the occupancy rate in all of the buildings on the north side of Roosevelt, but but Stacy, I had both in mind,
Okay.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I was going to ask you to answer.
When we the offices south of Roosevelt were chosen as a catalyst site for that reason. It's pretty dated office uses. There's a lot. At the time we did the existing conditions analysis, that park was about 50% vacant. So clearly struggling. As far as we know, the offices on the north side were doing better. There weren't any active listings or very few active listings for that park. I don't know what's happened in the last 6 months to 8 months with those vacancies. But that was why we went with that catalyst site as an example of maybe how a site could be repositioned. And ideally, you can take the best practices and the things we're speaking to in that catalyst site and say, we can apply this elsewhere in the corridor. So with that said, I mean, we think the corridor is a great spot for multifamily development to leverage and take advantage of all the services and transit. You've got to kind of have a pulse stop along the corridor as well. So We think it's a great fit for multifamilies and looking to diversify housing. We're not opposed to office if it's healthy and modern and can function well. And we do show, I think, a mix of office and commercial along the main frontage of Roosevelt. But behind that, we are showing multifamily. And I don't know, we didn't discuss incentives per se for implementing that. It was really trying to show that the village is open to options in looking at the corridor beyond what's been built in the past, I think.
I think it's important to state John's question puts a spotlight on something that I think is very important when looking at comprehensive planning. If the village was going through this effort 3 years ago, as insightful as John is, he likely wouldn't be asking questions about COVID's impact on the office market. And that's why it's important to recognize that a comprehensive plan is a guiding document and has to be flexible. It has to be perceived as a living guide as market conditions may change over time, and to provide a foundation for decision making. It's why we can't get hyper specific as to hard recommendations for uses on sites like that. Could be a grocery store, could be multifamily, could be a hotel. But what is the character of that redevelopment going to be? And what we're talking about is repositioning properties. It's not always about catalytic redevelopment. Sometimes it's pretty nuanced, but as markets shift and you don't know what's going to make a market shift, like COVID, or go back to, Q1 of 08 and the residential collapse, things had to recalibrate pretty quickly. And the impact was pretty substantial over the next several years. And a comprehensive plan helps navigate that by articulating a vision or a character for an area without dictating exact uses for properties like that. So John's question, again, it really puts a spotlight on something that is important, and the plan has to serve as a guide for those decisions. It can't necessarily dictate those outcomes. So.
Very good. John, did you have any follow-up
No,
questions?
no, thank you. Very few people have called me insightful, but I appreciate thank you. And thanks for your work. I look forward to more presentations. So
Thanks, John.
Thank you. All right. Is there anybody else in the audience who has a question that wants to type it in the question and answer box or wants to raise their hand?
Question or comment? We'll take both.
Certainly, if you have comments, we would encourage you to go to the website and input them so we can formally accept them and include them in our communications with the board and the plan commission, so they're aware of what people's comments are related to the plan.
I can put that last page from the presentation back up as well so that people can see where they need to go if they'd like to share comments.
Did you have some closing slides you wanted to cover, Kelly?
I covered them in the middle of the presentation when
I may ask you to do that again in just a few minutes. There are a few people that joined late.
Sure.
So Brandon and John, thank you for your excellent work and your presentation. Is there any summarizing responses or anything else you'd like to cover or bring to the attention of the public? We will be posting this Zoom call live, well, not live, a recording of this Zoom on the comprehensive plan website. We will get that to you shortly so it can be put out there. So anybody who missed the call can sign on, or if you're bored one night and you want to see it again, you can join and just take a listen. So I would like to make sure that Kelly covers once again at the end the ways to get to the information and how to provide feedback and other opportunities that will be coming up, like the Plan Commission public hearings again. So Brandon and John, did you have anything else you would like to share or hit on?
No, I think the most important thing at this point, and I know Kelly will likely hit on this at the end, is this is still in development. This is a working draft. This is not ready to push across the finish line yet. We want your input. Your input we've received so far has really helped shape and recalibrate the sub areas as we worked on those over the last several months and over the summer. And we anticipate public feedback helping to shape the draft we have right now. So I just want to thank everybody for taking the time. I know participating, especially now, is challenging. There's a lot of other things on our mind. So I want to thank everybody for taking the time. And with any comment or question, let Kelly or Stacy know. They'll pass it on to us and we will be responsive. So with that, thanks. And that's all I've got.
Yeah, thanks very much for participating. Really do appreciate your time tonight. Apologies for the audio issues. I don't know what happened. It's one of those things. But yeah, with that said, if you do have questions or comments because you couldn't understand a word I was saying, please email and we will respond. All right. We want to make sure everyone watching tonight gets the answers that they had if they have questions.
Certainly. Thank you, Brandon and John. So Kelly, if you could go through your closing portion again. I know we hit it pretty early, and I see a couple of new names on the list. So if you could cover it again for those that may watch this video later as well.
Okay, so I am sharing my screen here. Just wanted to show the slide here. This is the Glen Ellen Comprehensive Plan webpage that House Levine put together for us. The webpage has a ton of information. You can see some of the tabs up top here. This is the home portion. There's a little tab where you can, click to see the full document. That's going to be under news and updates, probably under documents here too. But there's an opportunity where you can provide comments directly through the website, and the consultant team will get those comments, as will staff. You're welcome to view the whole document there to kind of hone in on some of the more specific things that Brandon covered this evening. We love everybody's feedback, so please do provide those comments. And I have my email address here on the screen as well if you want to just directly provide those comments to me. Any of the staff can take the comments though, so feel free to reach out to any of the staff. I did mention before, there's lots of ways to stay connected and to hear what's going on in the community. One of the ways that I would encourage you to do so is through the village's website. There's a little button here on the front page. It says stay connected. If you click on that button, it takes you to a bunch of different ways and things that you can sign up for to get information about what's happening in the community. And we really do use these channels for communicating all kinds of different development projects or anything really big that's happening in the village. Notify me particularly if you click on this to link to the page. It will take you to this screen, and anytime there's any kind of an update related to the comprehensive plan, you can choose to receive that either via email or by text. So I'd encourage you to do that if you are interested in how this thing moves along over time. We do have a number of meetings, as I mentioned previously, that we're going to be moving into. We've got 3 public hearings before the Plan Commission coming up, and then possibly up to 3 meetings with the village board where we're really going to get into the nitty-gritty of the plan. So again, would love for everybody to participate and be a part of it and provide your comments and feedback.
Great. Thank you, Kelly. I appreciate that. So we are done early. We had contemplated possibly staying on in case anybody joined, but they won't really know what questions that they would have unless they had the benefit of the full presentation. So I am okay with ending early. Kelly, input?
I'm good on that too. And I think we've got another opportunity tomorrow for folks to join and see the full presentation again as well. So.
Yeah, I do want to mention to those still on the call, tomorrow night we're going to be doing Open House 2.0, and it'll just be Kelly and I, unless we can convince John and Brandon to jump on for 20 minutes and do their presentation again. So that's an opportunity. If you enjoyed what you saw or found it interesting, please feel free to extend an invitation or let people know that the same thing will be happening tomorrow night from 6 to 7. And we will be doing a presentation of generally the same information that was shared tonight, and then we'll do the question and answers as well. But we will do a shorter version, and we will conclude within 1 hour.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right.
everybody.
Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. We appreciate your time.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Thank you.
Thank
Bye-bye.
you.